Welcome to the Octavius Gould Experience, the podcast where we talk about leadership, entrepreneurship, or impressive, compelling journeys that people took that could give you a roadmap to success. And today I have the pleasure of having as a guest my longtime friend and former co-worker, Mitch Skyer. Mitch, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Octavius. Thank you for having me on.
Mitch, I am so excited to have you on today because we haven't seen one another in about 36 years. However, it felt like yesterday once we had a conversation about a week ago, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Mitch, for the benefit of my audience, I just want to give them some insight into your impressive background. For those of you who are watching or listening to this podcast episode, you definitely want to tune in and pay attention because this guest is truly impressive. Mitch got his BA from Binghamton University. He got his MBA from the University of Buffalo. And I had the pleasure of meeting Mitch, as we'll talk about soon, in 1993 when he was in a sales professional role at MCI Telecommunications, which then led him to getting a promotion into a senior manager role. From there, Mitch went on to become a regional sales manager at P Manage, then an area sales manager at Fivent Project Management, then a regional sales manager at Cognisa Security, which then turned into Cognisa Transportation. And then Mitch actually became an executive leader by taking a president role at Congregation. Is it Door Commit?
To me, yeah, that was a volunteer role. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Then on to a president role at, is it Soul Tice Transportation Group?
So we didn't do anything easy with our names between Cognisa and Solstice Transportation Group. We wanted to make it as challenging as possible. But yes, Solstice Transportation Group was the first company that I started. Yes.
Awesome, awesome. And
That
then,
is, so that was it.
well, you know what? The uniqueness in names make them memorable, correct?
Right. Once you get through them, then you don't forget.
Mitch, I think I got this one correct, or I'll get it correct. You became president at, is it Passio Technologies?
Nailed it. No changes. Yep, you got it.
See, that's easy. And then Faster Asset Solutions, president there as well, leading into your current role as managing director at AFI Strategic Partners LLC. Correct?
Perfect. Yeah.
See, I got through that. I got through that. That wasn't that hard. Well, Mitch, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. It's a great day. Looking forward to the Thanksgiving holiday coming up with family getting together. All of my children will be with us. It's a nice holiday, but I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
And I tell you what, I am very thankful for this opportunity to have a conversation with you on my podcast because, again, my goal is to always bring on compelling guests, mainly people who I am very familiar with and I've actually watched their journey from afar because I just truly believe that the role of leaders, whether you're a business owner or a leader in corporate America, is leveraging your expertise to create a roadmap to success for others. And that is definitely something that I know you've done. So let's start with our opportunity where we met back in 1993 at MCI Telecommunications. I was only there for about 5 months because I think at that time, Mitch, they said you had to be in your role for 6 months before you
Yep,
could even
that's exactly.
apply for a promotion, right?
Yeah, that's the rule.
So I was on my way out at about month 5 or 6, getting promoted to outside sales in Orlando, Florida, and Mitch had just come in. But from the moment we met Mitch, I was just highly impressed with you as a person, with you as a professional. So I am not surprised whatsoever that you've achieved such great success over the course of your career. And let's start with what made you join MCI at the time? Because if I recall, you were pretty much overqualified for the role as many people in that telemarketing center. So did you use it as a stepping stone?
It did. It was a bit of a tough economy at that time, as I know you remember. And I had a friend who was in the bay next to ours. He was in the back, a fellow by the name of Nabil Hakim, I think, who ended up going on to legal fame. He's an attorney up in Western New York. But he recommended, he said it's a good environment and it's a good way to get into the company. And that was what it was. I had an MBA. I'd had a decent amount of, beginning entry level experience, but not enough to get me over the hump to get that first entry level corporate job. So I said, oh, my parents gave me that great work ethic, and my grandfather, started over when he came over from Europe after World War II, started sweeping floors, ended up owning his own factory. And I said, well, I've got the right examples. Get in there, get on the phones, do this inside sales job and nail it till you can move to what you want to do next. And then it was the day I met you. That was day one.
And here we are,
That's
all of
right.
these decades, not just years, but decades later, having a conversation that hopefully will be compelling to people who are watching or people who are listening. Mitch, when you think about that journey through MCI, knowing that it was a stepping stone to greater things as you aspire to climb up the corporate ladder, what
Mhm.
lessons did you learn that others in a similar situation can take away? Because sometimes people aren't willing to do the grunt work, or as I always call it, and they told me at the time that I interviewed, start at the bottom of the totem pole to get to where you want it to go.
No question. Well, I will say, I walked in there. It was a really nice team that we had, so that helped in the beginning. I didn't necessarily want to do that work, but like you
Right.
said, you got to start somewhere. You get in there, and it was a great motivator that I walk in there. I meet this guy with a smile as big as his heart, and I see you, and you couldn't have been friendlier, more helpful, and that was my intro. You and then our manager. I think it was Dollar Bill. I think was his
Yes, yes.
nickname.
Bill Jackson. Yes, dollar bill.
And it was a great starting environment. And it was, tough work. You had to grind and get on the phones, but it taught me something about sales. When I was in college, one summer, the jobs didn't work out. I ended up taking a job selling Electrolux vacuum cleaners, knocking on the door to door. I say, hey, who is it? Mitch with Electrolux, coming. I sold 26 vacuum cleaners that summer, paid for my whole spending money for the next year in college. But those kinds of jobs teach you something. They teach you hard work. But to answer your question, I'll give you a great story. So you lasted about 5.5 months, 6 months and 11 days for me. At 6 months, we had to do it, and I got the job, and I got a job in corporate in the finance department.
Mhm.
And I walked over, and I had been in a couple of weeks in the job, and our senior director, his assistant, one time said something to me. We were just talking, and she said, Mitch, how come you're so nice and so pleasant? The other guys who are your age and the same level jobs aren't as quite as friendly, and they're a little bit arrogant, was what she was
Mm.
saying. And I said, well, that's very kind. Thank you for the compliment. Who doesn't like a compliment? And then she says, but how come you're so pleasant, nice? I said, well, first of all, please don't ever send me back. I got it here. That was my big worry. But it also showed you that you have to be humble in a way, no matter how much you
Right.
accomplish. I'm proud of what I've done. I earned everything I did, but I didn't do it alone, and it started there.
I love that story because I recently posted on social media about the leadership environment back in the 90s. I can remember becoming a first time sales supervisor. I think I was 26, Mitch.
Right?
Didn't know a lot about leadership, so I was learning on the fly every day. But I can recall telling people to leave their problems at the door. It was a very intense sales environment, and that's the culture that the organization, although MCI Telecommunication was a great company, had a great culture, in the 90s, the sales environment was all about focusing on business, focusing on the task at hand, achieving your goals, in which our goals changed every 2 weeks in the call center, and then in outside sales every month, and then eventually every quarter. Whereas today, it's all about emotional intelligence, having empathy for people. Tell me as it relates to that story you told about the compliment you received once you got that promotion and how that comes into play today as a leader.
So that's a great question. You know, all the way through, you mentioned all of my different jobs, and it was kind of fun to hear that progression because I forget about some of them from time to time. But through each one, you do learn and you grow. You know, when you're an individual contributor, like we both started, and when you're part of a team, you have that responsibility, but you don't have ownership of it. I had no authority, but my job was to do my job, right? And not worry about others other than the people on my team. So that was your first step in leadership. And then as you grow and understand how you're moving and how you're changing, each step of the way, when I became, let's say, a regional sales manager, then I had, even though I was still pretty much responsible for a smaller group, a very small group, I was
Mhm,
also now responsible for the support people. I had to make sure they were engaged. And
mhm,
so that was where you start to understand that while not everybody's on the front line, maybe not making the same money you are because you're taking the risk, but without them, you won't succeed. So that's the first humbling and understanding way on how you lead. And then as you move up, when I became the national sales director, and now I had responsibility for representing the company and the organization, as well as myself and my team, and making sure that my people had opportunities to grow, it went from there. And then when we get to it, when you start talking about going out on your own, then it's a whole new ball game.
Hey, I can appreciate the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship and then
Absolutely.
running an emerging business. When you think back and reflect on your early days at MCI and Cognisa, what leadership lessons did you carry forward into some of those executive roles? And then talk specifically about that journey that you made from individual contributor to senior manager to becoming an executive, owning your own company.
Yeah, those are great jumps, but they're very distinct. The way you describe them, and I can remember even all these years later, those very distinct levels. I almost would look at them as ledges in between my
Mhm,
career. And so when I first moved into executive leadership, the more seniorly, it wasn't executive, but senior leadership at MCI, that's exactly how you're describing it. So I had the role, I became a manager, then a manager too, and then
mhm,
I was offered a really unique opportunity, and I'll explain a little. I think you'll
mhm,
remember, but one of the local leaders in Atlanta was given the opportunity to become a branch sales director.
mhm,
And that big at MCI, it was a $96 million branch. So it was
okay.
a huge mega business of its own. And this is back in 1996. So that's when 96 million meant something back then. And so he knew me through some of the work I'd done at corporate,
Mhm,
and we had a bit of a reputation of working together. He was in the Atlanta branch and then became promoted to the director in charge of the
okay.
entire branch. And he offered me the number two role, which is the branch business manager. And the reason I describe that in some detail is because that's a job in Atlanta, Chicago, New
Mhm,
York, you're not getting until you're 40 or 45 years old.
mhm,
Those are big jobs. I was 27, much like you, getting that. And I'm
mhm.
now a senior manager at a company the size of MCI when I took this role. I had to move to Kansas, which was a bit of a shock for this New Yorker. But we went out to Kansas. It happened the day I found out about the job offer, the day I got back from my honeymoon. And then we moved about 2.5 months later and found out my wife was pregnant with our first daughter. So, they say do one change a year. We did four, and that worked out. And but I went out there and I got this role, and I got to see things that were amazing. I got to understand I was in charge of finance,
Mhm,
marketing, some of the sales, and the business operations. And frankly, I was in charge of the branch when our director was out, or on
mhm.
vacation or had to get called away for a meeting. I was the administrative leader of the branch at this young age.
Wow.
And so, boy, you had to learn. And these were not people who were younger than me or less experienced. So I had to show
Right.
that I knew what I was doing, but also couldn't overstep because I didn't have all the experience. So I had to learn and balance. And I will
Mhm,
say to finish off the story, what I really learned there was how to be a leader of a team. I had people to create loyalty. I had to show loyalty. And I had
Right.
to stand up for those people. I had to make sure that they had the opportunities to succeed, that I never made them look bad to make me look good. And that's when I first learned that no matter what, you are only there. You'll get the glory, you'll get the recognition. I got the
Right.
promotions because of my team, not in spite of them. And from that point on, and to this day, they'll still, every once in a while on Facebook or LinkedIn, they'll say, "Do you remember when we did this?" These are people from 25 years ago in Kansas I haven't seen. And that makes me feel good. It makes me know that I learned a little bit on how to become the manager I did later.
That is amazing. What made you transition from corporate leadership into some of those impressive roles in executive leadership, but now operating your own business where you had more responsibilities, but even greater risk?
Right. Well, that was, I would say, in my mind, there are two ways you start your own business. Some people are bold and they jump in. Some
Mhm.
people get pushed. And one day I walked in and they said, "Mitch, thank you for everything. After 5 years, we don't need you anymore. We sold the company. They already have a sales director. You're out." And I was a little shocked, a little surprised. And I remember being, I always say this, I was really, really mad and angry and
Right.
disappointed for 24 of the 35-minute drive home. And I got almost to my street and I said, "You know what? It's done. It's over. I can be mad. I can be angry. I
Mhm.
can be happy. I can be sad. It doesn't matter. So now it's time for an opportunity." And that is what had happened when they sold the company, when they sold Cognisa. It went to the largest shuttle bus providing company in the world at the time.
Mhm.
And they had sales. They didn't need me, or so they thought. I will tell you, 1 month later, I got a call from their VP of their VP of operations, who ultimately became their president. He said, "Hey, why don't you come to Baltimore for an interview?" And he interviewed me for the vice president. He was a senior VP for the vice
Mhm.
president of the Southeast region. Great job, nice base, $90,000 base, six figures with bonuses that
Mhm.
were basically guaranteed if you didn't destroy the business. And I got the job, I got the offer. And I decided, I came home and I said to my wife, I said, "I got the offer, went really well." She's like, "Great." I said, "I'm turning it down." She said, "You're turning what down?" I said, "I'm turning it down." I said, "This is my chance." Because I knew because I had already planned to start my company and I was in the beginning of doing that, and this was
Mhm.
Solstice Transportation Group. I said, if I don't do it, and if I don't try, I'll never forgive myself. Failing, I can live with it. I
Right.
don't want to, I won't allow it. But if it happens, because we can't control everything in our world, I said that I can live with. But not trying, I can't live with. I'll regret that
Right.
for the rest of my life. And I have a wonderful wife who does believe in me. And after a couple of minutes of, gritting her teeth and, and looking around the room, she said, "Okay, I believe you. I trust you. Go for it."
I love
And
that.
yeah, it took about 3 years before we came back to even, but eventually we got there.
I love that. I want to pause for a minute on the business aspect of things and go back to something that you just said, that you had a wonderful spouse who believed in you and who
Yeah,
trusted that you were going to pivot to success regardless of whatever you did. Tell me about the importance of having that type of family dynamic, and then touch on your family because I know you have some children
yeah.
along with your wonderful wife. How does that make you feel, even reflecting on the fact that at that pivotal moment, excuse me, that she was right there supporting you?
That is really, really important. And, I think there are people who will go forward anyway, despite getting,
Mhm.
negative feedback or pushback from their own spouse or family members. And, my wife and I are different that way, different risk tolerances, all that.
Mhm.
But we had this mutual respect for one another.
Mhm.
She got to be the person she wanted to be professionally and personally, and so did
Mhm.
I. And that's one of the reasons we're going to be celebrating next month 29 years of marriage.
Oh,
Nothing, thank you. There's nothing's easy
congratulations.
and nothing happens without working at it.
Right.
But that is because of that. It's where the core of it. There's love and there's caring, but the mutual respect. So when she and I talked about it, she understood that I wasn't being frivolous. We had three children at the time that we
Mhm.
are three children now.
Mhm.
My oldest may have been 7 at the time. She's 28 now. My son was probably 4, and the little one was just about 2. And
Wow.
she's a senior in college in 21. Just picked her up today from the airport for Thanksgiving. And I remember distinctly, we were that day that I got fired or got let go because of the sale. We were heading to take pictures. It was around the holidays. It was in
Mhm.
December, and so we were taking family pictures. So all three kids were dressed in nice outfits, and we get there, and my wife's like, "Well, let's cancel it. You just got fired." I said, "We already paid for it. Let's go get some pictures. What's the difference?" And I remember before we took the pictures, I told my kids, I said, kids, just come here. I'll let you know Dad is not going to be working there anymore, but we're going to be fine. I'm going to do something else. I'm already working on it. And, we'll tell you when it's all set up, but
Mhm.
just going to be different.
Right.
So that was fine. And then all of a sudden I look over and I see my 5-year-old son with his arm around the 2-year-old and going, listen, things are gonna be tight for a little bit. You're not gonna be able to have milk for a while, but water's fine. You'll be okay. You just I had that kind of support going for me. But all through it, every minute of every day, every up and down, the business started slow but steady, and I did okay the first year. Not great, but okay.
Mhm.
But by year 3, I had tried some things, got a little aggressive, and I have to tell you, I was a whisker away from going under 3 years in. I'd hired somebody, and you make decisions, you think they're right, but it's trial
Right.
and error. And that was more error that year. And through it all, my wife stuck with me, and luckily, my dad believed in me and gave me a few bucks to get me over the hump, and then I was able to pay him back. But those are the kinds of things that you have to have. You have to have your family behind you,
Mhm.
give you good advice, trusted mentors. But I don't know that my wife ever really cared about transportation technology in her core, but she
Mhm.
listened every day when I would come home and talk through it. And a customer did this, and I remember she would get mad if somebody didn't treat. She's like, "Why'd that customer say it to you?" I'm like, well, they were right. I really did mess up. She goes, they shouldn't do that anyway. So that kind of support really, really allows you to go forward and do what you need to do.
Exactly. When I coach entrepreneurs, I always tell them you need to have your support system
Hmm. True.
to pick you up when you're down, because as an entrepreneur that transitions hopefully into an emerging business owner, because as you know, Mitch, there's a difference, right?
Right.
You're going to have to deal with the ebbs and flows of success. But here's something else that I picked up on. I always tell people you have to explain the why behind things, whether you're a
Mhm.
small business owner or a leader in corporate America. Make sure that you communicate effectively and explain the why. And you did that even to your family by explaining to your kids what was happening at the time and reassuring them that everything was going to be okay, and then explaining the why behind it. So, what would you say to leaders out there who, whether they're a leader of a business that they own or a leader within corporate America, about the importance of communicating effectively up front so you set expectations?
It's a great question. And I've thought a lot about that on how I would communicate effectively, how to communicate effectively. And I don't say that to be cute, but I think it is really important because as a leader and an entrepreneur and a business owner, you have to know who you are. So I'd
Mhm.
say there are two things about that. One is about your personal responsibility on how you accomplish your objectives. And
Mhm.
the second one is being able to communicate your message. So we all know, we've all heard the elevator speech. How do you tell what you do in 30 seconds that it takes to get to the top floor while you're in the elevator
Mhm.
with someone? Very important. But to me, that's not the critical part. For me, it's the 1, 2, 3. You should be able to explain exactly what your product, your solution, your business accomplishes in 1, 2, 3 steps. So, number one, I will help you understand what your business goals are from a
Mhm.
sales perspective. Number two, I will help you design that sales process. And number three, I will allow you to implement that sales process to effective revenue generation. One, two, three. We're going to figure out what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and then how do we turn it into money. Now you know
Mhm.
what I do as a business. That's what AFI is.
Mhm.
I hope that makes you want to ask me more questions. It may not. You may be thoroughly bored after that, but at least we've established what you want. The second piece of that effective communication is being able to clearly explain the reasons and the way that people accomplish what they set out to do.
Mhm.
So we all have goals, we all understand it, but the worst enemy we have is ourselves by getting in our own way. And
Mhm.
so I delivered this as a sales kickoff to an annual sales meeting to my team at Faster. But I'll tell you that these three words or three components of that personal responsibility have gotten me through everything. That's pretty much what I built my career on is
Mhm.
do it now, do it next. And if I have to remind you, you failed. Do it now is take action. You have to take action. You have to get things done and you cannot procrastinate. There are times where you can't do it this second, of
Right.
course, is real. So you have to have a plan of attack. That is do it next. So do it now, do it next. And if I have to ask you if you finished what I asked you to do, you failed. There should never be a time that I have to remind you. You should come to me with an update, but if I have to remind you, and that is the best advice I've given every sales professional, every operations person, the implementation team is do it now, do it next,
Mhm.
and don't be reminded. And if you use that, everything else works around it. So those are my two communications pieces.
Absolutely powerful. One of the challenges that any business owner will have, Mitch, as you know, is scaling a business. Sometimes the CEO, the owner, president isn't the right professional to scale that business, and they bring in other individuals and they may take a board leadership role or a chairman's role. At what, at which company did you have the biggest challenge scaling the organization? And then how did you go about successfully accomplishing that?
So the Passio Technologies was my baby. I had a co-founder too, an
Okay.
amazing, incredible guy by the name of Scott Reiser. He lives here in Atlanta with like I do. And Scott and I, we met each other at a networking meeting, did a little work together with our two
Mhm.
companies that we had first, and ended up deciding, and that's a great story, to become partners. And that built a partnership over 10 years and a friendship. I truly love him as a brother. We were complementary.
Okay.
So I had the benefit at Passio. So that's not the answer to your question. But
Mhm.
Passio is the company we built from the ground up. Scott and I
Mhm.
threw in $500 each, bootstrapped it, and turned it in 10 years later, a company that we could sell and had an incredibly successful exit for us and built something that has a legacy and that will go on way beyond the two of us. But the company where I had to answer your question, where I had that epiphany and understanding, where I had a brick wall of scaling and understanding was Faster Asset Solutions.
Okay.
So I was invited after we had sold our company to a private equity firm. After about a year, they asked me to take over one of their other portfolio companies.
Mhm.
So I was still in the group, and then they asked me to take over Faster. So instead of being the managing director and president of Passio, Scott took over Passio. He's running that day to day, and
Okay.
I took over Faster because the gentleman who was running it exited the business. He wasn't the founder, but he exited. So I
Okay.
had this unique situation. I had come from a successful exit, built a company over 10 years, had hit our earnout on the 11th year. It was a great success. Everyone knew me in the industry. It was really
Mhm.
wonderful. Now I have to walk into a 40-year-old business that I didn't start. It was in fleet technology. I didn't really know too much about it. Every transit system is a fleet. Not every fleet's transit. So I really didn't know. I had to learn on the job. And now I'm in charge. And we had to grow it. They didn't have a good sales team. They didn't have a lot of growth structure put in place, but they were a very good company. So my
Okay.
first job was don't screw it up. That was number one. But here's the answer to your question. And I know I have a knack for getting a long way around the answer.
You're all
But
good.
but when I but what happened was is that first year, I since Scott always handled the tech and the development side at Passio, I had the benefit of a guy I trusted implicitly doing that, and I handled the sales and the client success and the customer service.
Mhm.
I didn't have to worry about it. But now everything was my responsibility. I wasn't the expert in everything, but the buck stopped with me, as it does
Right.
with the leader. And so I had a couple of people in the company who are excellent technologists and a couple of people in the corporate side. And I
Hmm.
said, they've got it, they know tech, and I allowed it to them. And I get to the end of the first year and I'm like, holy moly, they didn't do anything right. Now, they didn't make any bad decisions. They didn't
Hmm.
do the technology wrong. They didn't understand the business strategy. And I realized this was my limitation. I put my trust in the people, but I didn't give them the tools to be successful.
Mm.
Because if I'm in charge of the business and I'm there, I must be the chief strategist. I don't do it alone. I don't do it in a vacuum. And I certainly don't do it without listening. But I have to be the one to set where the business is going to go.
Right.
What are our goals? What are our objectives? How do we become successful? And so I took over and I now said, here is what tech can do. And they said, that's not possible. I said, then I became a cheerleader. I'm like, yes, it is. Program faster. I don't care how you do it. This is what we need. We need this data. We need these tools.
Hmm.
We need this interaction. We need this kind of integration with with other programs. And they said, that's too much to do in a year. I said, no, it isn't. And we just get that way. But what I did was I challenged them because now I learned after a full year that I had to do that, but I also had to get the tools and learn how to be the chief strategist for our development. We were a tech company, and that was my greatest lesson. And I will never, ever allow that not to be my responsibility and not learn and get the education I need to do that and make
Hmm.
sure because I'm not going to ever learn how to program anything. I need to know who to hire and how to trust that they're doing what we need to do. And it
Hmm.
was the last 2 years that I was there with the greatest growth, greatest success, greatest profit margins
Hmm.
that they've had since before they purchased the company, into the private equity group. So it was a tough lesson that first year, but a good one.
Mitch, I cannot let you slide without elaborating more on something you said about 5 minutes ago, because some of my entrepreneurs out there who listen or watch the podcast episode may want to know more details. Did you say that at Passio, you all started the organization with $500 from each person, you and your business partner?
Right. Yep, we each threw in $500, opened a bank account, and we bootstrapped everything. We started in a one room office with no window. When we were starting to cracking, we got a new office with a window for $50 a month more. And then we ended up having our first employee, who are actually our first two employees. They started about the same time. We're
Mhm.
still with Passio today. And Scott and I just through a combination of hard work and not willing to fail. Period. The end.
Mhm.
We would just refuse to fail. We tried a lot of things and we tried to do it differently and with a relentless focus on the client's perspective. One
Mhm.
thing we decided from the beginning was our mantra was if we do a bad job for the client, we're going to lose that business. Maybe we won't
Exactly.
make as much profit. Maybe we won't make any profit this year. Maybe it doesn't even hurt us because we have other clients. But if
Mhm.
they choose us incorrectly, they can lose their job. They're betting their lives and their careers, their families on us.
Mhm.
So we better treat every single client, whether they're $50 a month or
Mhm.
$5,000 a month or $80,000 a month. We had some that
Mhm.
we would treat them all with that perspective. And so yeah, we did $500 each, built it up. 10 years later, we're doing about $4.1 million a year revenue, had 21 full-time employees, and that's when we
Wow.
joined the technologies.
That is so impressive. Mitch, whether I'm giving a keynote or speaking to a client, I always tell them it's all about the customer experience.
Yeah,
Regardless of what your products or services are, it's still at the end of the day somewhat a people's business, right?
you're
And you
right.
have to build relationships and treat your clients extremely well.
No, you're right. And what we realized, I was reading a book, this isn't my quote, but they said you have to define your just cause.
Mhm.
And that makes perfect sense to me. Is what do you do and why? I mean, it
Mhm.
was so simple. They called it a just cause. And I'm like, this is an amazing concept, as simple as it is. So our job was to enable transportation, whether it was for a student at a college so that they didn't miss their class or got to the sports teams,
Hmm.
workout room, or just were able to volunteer to help somebody who was underprivileged. They were at class, they were doing that. If it was a
Hmm.
person, in a city getting a job, or someone trying to see a sick relative at an airport, we were enabling them to make sure that they could get to the place they needed to be. And that really was what we were doing. We were
Hmm.
also making sure that our clients could afford to provide this level of service because
Hmm.
they had the information and they could make it efficient. They weren't sending buses to the wrong places that weren't
Hmm.
necessary. If you think about it that way, that was our mission and our message. And it wasn't about beating the competition. Sure, who doesn't want to win? We always did. But we didn't do it because we said, oh, they're doing that. Let's figure out how to do that same thing, but a little bit better. It
Hmm.
was, how can we be the best that we are? And knowing that no matter what happens, what goes wrong, because putting a computer on a bus is a terrible idea, no matter who you are. But we realized that as long as we were always there to help make that work, we could deliver on our promise. And if it had a problem or mistake, or there was a leak in the bus and it got wet, we would fix it, even if it wasn't our fault. So what? The client would pay for it. That was their problem, but we had to solve the issue. And if we didn't take responsibility, we were worthless. But if we did, we were their most valuable vendor, and that's how we built it. But yep, the answer again,
Hmm.
my incredibly long answer to your question is yep. Got and I did it. $500 in a dream. That's what we always said. Yep.
Hey, this podcast episode is about you, Mitch, not me. So you can speak as long as you want. So don't worry about being
Don't
long-winded.
don't give me too much rope here. I'll keep going. But no, it's great.
Because at the end of the day, you are dropping gems, as they say on the street. And I'm quite sure my audience, whether they're a corporate leader or an entrepreneur aspiring to evolve into a business,
Mhm.
everyone's taking something away. And on that note, Mitch, what does good leadership mean to you today? And how did that definition change over the years?
That's a really good question. I think to me, good leadership is understanding the capabilities of the people that are working for me
Mhm.
and pushing them to reach their highest potential. And I don't think of that as pushing someone to the point of distraction or disturbance. That's not the
Mhm.
goal. But people have a lot of self-doubt and they think I have no self-doubt, which is completely untrue. But sometimes you have to put on the game face and get out there and say, I've got this no matter what. We're solving
Exactly.
the problems. I don't care what they are. But of course, we all do. We have those moments, we have those challenges, but it's how you respond to that. And being able to share that with someone, knowing I'll say to one of the people who worked for me, one time we were talking and I said to her, she was very upset, felt like she couldn't do the job or was felt falling short, was very kind of her, but she felt like she was failing me individually. And I'm like, look, this is not personal. But I said, let me stop you for 1 minute. I said, you're going to make
Mhm.
me very upset and very angry. And she goes, what? What do you mean? I said,
Mm.
don't you think for 1 minute that I would ever be such a poor judge of character that I would hire someone who couldn't do the job? That is
Mm.
not allowed. You are here because I know you can do it. Now, you're upset, you're struggling. My job is to help you get past that because the question of your competence is not even on the table. That has already been solved. What
Mhm.
we have to do is figure out what's standing in your way, what roadblock can we remove, and how do we give you the pieces you need to do what I already know you can do. So how can I help you? And that's where I think my leadership change was understanding that
Mhm.
everybody comes from a different place. But I don't have to reduce my expectations, but I don't need to be a jerk to push you to
Mhm.
be your. I can do it with kindness, caring, and love. I'm also always going to be who I am. No one, people are saying, oh, I should do it the way you do it. I'm like, no, you should take what I do, steal the parts that work for you, and do it your way. And if
Mhm.
you can emulate me that way, then that's a great compliment. But that's also a great win for you because whatever I've done successfully will pass along to you. But if you try to be me, it's disingenuous.
Right.
Just because it works for me, I can't be you, you can't be me. But if you say a gem, Octavius, that I like, I will tell you unabashedly, I'm stealing it. I love it, I'll use it, but I'll say it my way. I always joked, I said, I'm never going to come across as a good old boy from the South, right? Even though I'm
Hmm.
in the South and I'm doing, I am not a good old boy Southerner from one of the low country areas. It's not me. But what I am is, yes, I am a New Yorker. I was born in New York, 30 years later, haven't lost my accent.
Hmm.
But what really that boils down to, it's not where you're from or where you're born, is
Right.
the people who were saying that wanted to know that they could trust you. And the day that I retired or left the company in July after I'd been those great experiences, one of my long time clients, almost our longest, said to me, Mitch, we're going to miss you. We appreciate everything you did. You
Hmm.
guys weren't always perfect. I'm like, still on my last day, but it was true. He goes, but one thing I knew is anytime I called you and you said you were going to do something to try to fix it or to actually
Hmm.
fix it, I could always trust you. Greatest compliment I ever got. He knew he could trust my word. And that was after 20 years of working with him and knowing them and being part of it. 20
Hmm.
years I knew them, and that's what they said about me. That one is worth more than money, worth more than any, recognition or awards. If someone could say that after 2 decades, I'd take that. And I think that was my management. No one ever felt working for me, I believe, that I
Hmm.
didn't have their back. I wasn't going to be there for them. I might hold them to very high expectations, and not everybody loved that.
Right.
But when you delivered, you knew you got rewarded.
And Mitch, over your career, you've worked at so many different types of organizations at various levels. What practices have you found to be most effective in building that high trust, high accountability culture that you just talked about?
That's great. So when I was working for someone else,
Mhm.
part of it was making sure that I believed in the mission and their just cause, to
Right.
steal that again. But what is the purpose? Because if I didn't, then I shouldn't be there, and I can't do what you said. I can't build that core of trust for my people. But as long as I believed in what the mission was and I believed in where we were trying to accomplish for our clients and that our leaders did it, then I could transfer that. So that was my number
Hmm.
one thing. I had to do that. It was a little different when it was me because when I
Hmm.
own the company, it is my mission. So as long as I can communicate very clearly to you what my mission is, what do I want to accomplish, what do I want our clients, our vendors, and our employees to feel about our organization, then I know that as long as you agree that that's important to you, we're going to win together. So
Hmm.
in these different companies, I always looked for that. The other thing was teaching people how to work when you didn't disagree with the mission, but you might have disagreed with the process or the next step.
Hmm.
I'm sure you said that 8,000 times in your career as I have is you can argue with me when we're behind the scenes. The moment we step out, we are in lockstep because you have to be, because
Right.
you have to understand who you're delivering for. I am here for you. I am here to make this company great. If I don't want to, then I have the option to leave. No one is an indentured servant. We can all leave when we want to. We are in a free country where we can choose who we work for and where. And that is our option. So as long as you're there, you better be on board with the mission and you better be on board to do it. And it's great to also have that safe space.
Hmm.
I also loved being able to tell people, challenge me. It's a benefit and a curse. I know you're a strong-willed person. It's hard to argue with me. I know that. I've learned that. You have to know who you are. And I come in a room and I'm a bit of a force, and I get that. Not that nobody ever argued with me. That didn't happen. But for the most part, I come in with a lot of, whatever you want to call it, gravitas or
Hmm.
or a lot of confidence in what it
Right.
is. And it's hard for people to disagree with me. So I've had to work on ways to do that because I'll say it's open and people
Right.
generally, but I don't think they believe me 100%. That's my personality. So what I have to do is I have to make openings for
Hmm.
people to disagree with me without it feeling like disagreement. Like, okay, here's what I'm thinking, but here are the other two things I think we can do. Tell me why we should, not do you think they're right or wrong? Because if I
Right.
ask you to think you're going to try to do what in this case,
Hmm.
most of the time people are trying to do what I think is right. So I recognize that about myself. So what I would say is, I want to drive this other way. I want you to tell me why we should do it, or
Mhm.
what are all the problems if we switch to a completely different approach.
Right.
And that helped me immensely because then I got honest answers. I got people thinking about it and doing that.
Hmm.
And without that, I want a team of rivals. I want people to disagree with me. So I had to find a way to make it work with my personality. And that's another thing I would say is whether you're on your own or you're the entrepreneur, you're the leader of a huge company
Hmm.
yourself that you started, or you work for someone else, or you work for the shareholders, you've got to find a way to get people to contribute to your ideas to make you better. And you better be prepared to listen. I
Hmm.
would remember Scott and I, with my business partner, we would go back and forth. I'm like, there's no way you would do that. It's wrong. There's no way. He'd be like, you don't understand. I'm like, you don't understand. I said, where'd you go to school? How did you even learn something? We go back and forth as good friends, but we go back and forth. And then we would be going, and I would get to the end of the argument, and we're talking, and all of a sudden I'd realize, oh my gosh, he was right. Now what do I do? I took my
Hmm.
ego aside, which is not always easy. I said, all right, we're done with the argument. You were right. I see it now. And that was
That
the end of it.
that
And
balanced ego, right? It's important to have a balanced ego.
that's a great way because you can't be a shrinking about being, the leader. You've got to push forward because we're the ones on the front line as entrepreneurs. But sometimes
Exactly.
when you're wrong, you'll be like, yeah, there's no way to say it. Yep, I was wrong. You got it. That was the better way. Yeah, we'll move
Exactly.
on.
Exactly.
And then I'm a hero because then I recognize, no, but it's important to listen to.
I always say if we're always agreeable and agreeing on everything, then one of us is unnecessary, right?
That's a very fair statement, I think.
And Mitch, I noticed in looking and perusing your LinkedIn profile that you often speak at national trade associations. How do you approach thought leadership in an industry that at certain times was slow to change? I don't know if that's the same now, but I know it was years ago.
Sure. I think with showing people the vision of what can be accomplished
Hmm.
in those areas. Why do you want to? Because there were a lot of people. I remember back at Faster, there was a new technology, pretty new. It's not quite as earth-shattering today,
Hmm.
but it was predictive maintenance.
Hmm.
And very simple without doing a seminar on fleet management. Predictive maintenance is taking things that your truck, car, van, bus tells you it's going on, seeing things that are occurring and anticipating what will go wrong and when it'll go wrong. So you get the
Hmm.
sensors, you get the heat. If your battery's always dipping down at different times, you're going to lose the battery or things happening on the brakes. The things that the car tells you or vehicles tell you an awful lot. And
Right.
I would go to these fleet professionals and they would say, Mitch, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. It's a great idea, but I can't do it. And it's not that great an idea. When something breaks, we fix it. We do, regularly maintenance. We do regular maintenance work. We change the oil. We do these things, but I can't change a transmission because I know 77% of the time that transmission is going to fail within a 12-month window. That's nonsense.
Mhm.
And I said, it's not nonsense, but the problem is you can't build an organization that is that efficient on maintaining the vehicles because it's not cost effective. That's what they were truly saying to me. So I said, I get it. But what I had to do to answer your question is, how do I present that in an important way? And what I did was, is I said, don't take this at face value that the transmission might go so we get ahead of it so you never have a catastrophic failure on the road. It's going to happen. That's why there
Right.
are tow. What we want to do is we want to anticipate that edge of the bell curve, the most extreme, egregious situations, whether it's safety, whether it's the vehicle that's transporting your highest value commodity, whether it's
Hmm.
the one that cannot fail, then use these things as tools and understand your business as well as the tools and the technology that come in here. And I said, is AI important to you in the maintenance world or in transit? Maybe a little, but no, not really. I said, how about this? You're a 25-year professional and you know everything about fleet maintenance because you're really good at what you do,
Hmm.
but you can't know everything that's happening. What if that AI bot could tell you all the things that are happening and all you had to do was evaluate and make a decision? What if we had Freddie the fleet manager telling you all the things coming up and now all you had to do was use your expertise and make decisions on excellent, defined, and refined
Hmm.
information? And all of a sudden, I changed the slow moving environment and made people think, well, there is a place, but the place isn't at that extreme level.
Right.
That's not practical. So it's a practical use of the future state of the business.
Mhm. Now, Mitch, you talked about decisions. You talked about safety. When competing priorities show up, as I know they often did, whether it was innovation, cost, safety that you just touched on, and growth, as it relates to your decision-making process, how did you choose what would win?
It's an easy question. No problem. I just picked number two or C, right? That's one of the biggest challenges because what is it, that triangle? You can
Mhm.
have anything you want, with the right, time, cost,
Right.
and quality. But what we always tried to do was try to understand that everything required some evaluation, and
Hmm.
panel of rivals or team of rivals helped a lot in that environment because
Hmm.
I got competing priorities, and if you could defend them, that helped me with my decision making. But what I
Hmm.
looked for was what's going to get me the best return today as a consideration, but that wasn't how I decided. And I said, what will give me the best return in 5 years? And I put that away because
Hmm.
I never was in a 5 year world. That's
Right.
not what exists for common entrepreneurs.
Right.
Sure, if I had a $20 billion company, I might be thinking about the next decade, but I never was. That's not the real world. What I wanted to know what was going to happen in the next 3 to 18 months, because that was my world. Because what I learned very quickly is any I make today, I won't see if I was right or wrong for 6 months. I
Right.
just won't. So I better be as right as I can because in 6 months, fixing it now takes another 6 months. Now I've been wrong for 12 months. That's not acceptable. So,
Hmm.
how do I do that with the right balance? And then there has to be a give and take. What Winston Churchill said, never let the perfect get in the way of the good. Boy, oh boy, if there's an entrepreneur's mantra, that better be it, right? Because the perfectionists don't usually succeed. There are
Right.
exceptions. There are the people at the edge of technology who build things that I couldn't even pronounce, let
Mhm.
alone, run or sell. But the everyday, day-to-day businesses thrive on making sure that they figure out what does the customer need? How can I deliver it quickly, efficiently, and safely? And how do I make a fair and good profit doing it? It's really that simple. Let me do something you don't want to do yourself or you can't do, and I'll do it
Mhm.
for you, either faster or better. It's not that complicated. Now, how
Right.
you do all that is certainly not the simplest thing, but that's what I really would focus on is it's a balance. It was very rarely one strategic path.
Mhm.
But the other thing that I will add to that is I always was thinking about what I was going to do in if you use that 6 month window, what did I do in between to evaluate and adjust and change? I wasn't going to give up because if you make a decision, you have to stick with it. But
Mhm.
how did I adjust those decisions so that I'm looking at it? I can't just set and forget it. That doesn't work. So how do I make that as part of my everyday look? How are we looking? Are we accomplishing? And just
Mhm.
talk to people, talk to clients, talk to your vendors, talk to people. What is it that you want? Tell me if you could have anything in the world. Don't worry about time and money. Just tell me your wish list.
Right.
That's a very valuable question. And if somebody wants to do something that's impractical or impossible, I don't argue with you. I say I got it. Now they may ask me, "Will you do that?" I'll say no, and I'll explain why.
Mhm.
But I want to hear what you want because I might be able to get halfway there. And I just wouldn't have thought of it. And now I can accomplish two things instead of one. You learn things by realizing you're not the only smart person in the room.
Nice. I have one question that I'm going to end with that I think will help my younger audience members who are just getting out of college, transitioning into the business world. But first, tell me about AFI Strategic Partners. You've been there as the president for 5 months, if I'm correct, 5 or 6 months. Tell me about that organization and the great things you all are doing.
This is the business that I started when I knew I was leaving, and I, got it ramped up. I hired someone, a business manager, to help me, organize and be strategic with it. And essentially, I love running companies. I love building companies. I'm an
Mhm.
investor. I look for businesses to advise and consult with. But my true passion, what I enjoy is the science and the implementation of sales and sales organization process. And that dovetails very often into, building a company greater and bigger because nothing happens if you don't sell, right?
Right.
No matter how you do it. So what AFI Strategic Partners, the mission is, and if you take a look at our website, what you'll see is there's something that I call sales ignition. And that's
Mhm.
the point in time when you realize I can no longer let sales happen to me. I have to happen to sales. And if I just say, people who are entrepreneurs and are charismatic or just smart, they draw in a certain amount of people. People will buy from them. They have a friend,
Mhm.
they have a client, they have someone they work with, someone they know, and they build on that. And then there are referrals, and then there are people who benefit from that work that you do, and maybe they're
Mhm.
brilliant in their area, but that comes to an end. That is not a scalable solution. It's a great way to start, especially if you do well in those areas,
Mhm.
but you hit a point, whether you're 0 to 5 million or in that second tier of the 6 million to $80 million businesses, and those are the two tiers that
Mhm.
I work in. If you're a startup to 5 million, you're going to get to that point. It might be a year in, it might be 5 years in, it might be 3 months in, depends on the business. When
Mhm.
you've decided that you're willing to invest your time, sometimes your dollars,
Mhm.
but definitely your time in focusing on how do I go from a reactive sales environment to a proactive, that's where I step in. We come in and we figure out what are the tools that you need to set up? Who are the people? What are the processes? What's the design of your sales structure in order to reach your goals? And the first thing we do is like any other good business advisor is I figure out where do you want to get to? Like I'd like to be a little bigger. That's not a goal. You want to accomplish A, B, and C. I want to grow organically. I want to get an investment. I want to have an exit strategy. I want to be acquired. And that requires X number of sales. Okay. Now, what are we going to do with your business? How does your business change the lives and the businesses of those people or other businesses you sell to? Now, how do we get that message and those sales and what's the value that we can provide to them and how do we communicate that? And that's what we do. It's very process driven, but it's all about getting that sales and finding out how do we change from being a charismatic salesperson, and some people aren't very charismatic, but they're a charismatic salesperson, to a business with a sales process, a sales structure, and then
Mhm.
ultimately sales success.
Mitch, please tell my audience, how can they learn more about you or learn more about AFI Strategic Partners?
Well, AFI Strategic Partners is the website. So AFIstrategicpartners.com. Search for Mitch Skyer. The sky's the limit, Skyer. Search for me online. I love to talk. I'm blessed with what's happened to me in my career. I won't say it didn't happen through hard work or that I didn't deserve it. I deserved every penny of it. But I'm in a wonderful place. I'm blessed where I have the opportunity to talk to people. So reach out, shoot me a note on LinkedIn. I answer, send me an email, go to the website. The form works. My business manager, Jennifer, checked it. So come to the website, take a look at it, see a little bit about my bio, and just reach out to me. We can have a Teams call. We can connect, through text. And I just want to hear what you're doing because I'm so interested in what people are doing and how they're doing because I'm going to learn from you.
Mhm.
In the beginning, I'm going to learn more from you than you will from me. I'm not interested in worrying about that first hour of billing or whatever. Sure, I want to make money like anybody else, but
Mhm.
that has to happen once you've established trust. So LinkedIn, Mitch Skyer, Skyer. AFI Strategic Partners is the website. Reach out to me, find me, and then let's just talk. If I can help you, great. If we can just have a conversation, and now we both have a new business acquaintance and friend, I love that. That's how I'm building my next stage in life because I have that flexibility, and that's what I want to do and give back that way.
Mitch, you mentioned the word of the hour, trust. And I can assure my audience or anyone who's tuning in that Mitch is definitely a trusted advisor, and not everyone has earned that title. And with that being said, Mitch, what advice can you give to young managers, whether they're a frontline manager or a middle manager or even a leader who wants to lead on impact with impact rather than title?
That's a great question. I would say the first thing I would do is, and this isn't to be pandering to you, is surround yourself with great people that you can learn from and emulate. So, Octavius, knowing you and as you've done with me, I've followed your career and follow you on LinkedIn, listen to your other podcasts, and that's one great example. But surround yourself with people who will teach you something, not specifically about what you do. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but also about who you are or who you want to become. If there are people who are great family people or people who lead in their community, lead in their religious organizations, lead with their children, children who struggle, or are just people who mentor others, those are great people to learn from and be around. And do those informational interviews. Sit down and have a cup of coffee with anybody you can. You're going to learn something. Travel with people, be on not-for-profit boards, or not even a board. If you're not at that stage, just get on a committee, do that, whatever it matters. Surround yourself with the people, engage with people, and
Right.
always ask what they do first. What do you do? How do you do it? Who are you? What's your family? Because you can talk about yourself, no problem. I love talking about myself, but I don't learn anything talking about myself. I already know all of this. It's not, these aren't the first time I've told these stories, Octavius. They've happened once or twice. But what I have learned is I learned about you and your two wonderful daughters, and I understand what, in the different places you've been. And even the last time we talked and we were joking about, your college career and how things changed and, that you agreed with your coach and things like that, which were personal. I don't think I shared any secrets, but they were personal to
You're good.
you. But then I learned a little bit of something about the quality of the character you are, and you take a little piece of that from each person. So in the simplest terms, if you're a young manager, you don't want to worry about what you look like. You will look good if you have good people. That's easy. Don't let your ego worry about it. There's nothing wrong with saying you did something right. You can say, hey, listen, I went in there, I had Bill and Mary and Sam do this work.
Mhm.
They did a great job. Here's what each of them did. Sam had a little trouble, but I talked to him about it. We worked through it. And I said, I feel really good. And I also feel like I grew as a manager because I was able to help bring these things together. So that part helped me as well. But you look good because your team, when your team succeeds, whatever that team is, you look great. They know it happened because you were the manager. Just like you'll get blamed if it doesn't go well. But you don't have to push somebody's nose in it about what you did. Don't be shy. Don't hesitate. If you accomplish something, that's great. I'm not ashamed of anything I've done, but you can be humble without being ashamed, but you can also be proud without being arrogant. And both of those help those young managers more than anything because they will rise up with you and you bring people along and then you build loyalty both above you and below you.
Mitch, you can come on my podcast anytime. And as a matter of fact, you can be the host because you have so much wisdom and expertise that you shared so well today. And I appreciate it. But I can't let you go without sneaking in one more question. One of the things that I realized, Mitch, is that your business acumen is so off the charts and impressive. It leads me to assume, and that's a no-no, I shouldn't be making assumptions that you're probably not a great cook because you're such a great business person. But do you have a signature dish since we're 3 days away from Thanksgiving that you're putting on the table?
So I will tell you, and I was hustling. I have a couple of things that I do. This is great. You found me out. So I love making half sour pickles. I have do it. So I made pickles. I just finished right before we came on the podcast. I finished. I have two flavors, half sour and half sour jalapeno, and they're both in the fridge ready. So Octavius, you're invited over on Thursday. They'll be ready. And then the other thing is I got myself a smoker. My son and I went out and did a spur of the moment purchase. That's a little problem with a little bit of success. I have no self-control. So I bought the Traeger pellet smoker and I'll be smoking a turkey at 5 in the morning on Thursday. So come by for a drink and that's my thing. So I'll be brining it and doing it. So I'm in charge of the turkeys and the pickles. Those are my signature dishes.
Okay, okay. Now I will follow up to see how everything turned out because I'm going to hold you accountable for that. Mitch, I tell you what, I truly enjoyed this episode. I am just grateful that we had one, and most importantly, an opportunity to catch up after 35 plus years and learning about one another's family. We talked football and know one of your children attends Ohio State University, so there's a big Michigan Ohio State game coming up, right?
Fingers crossed.
And I assume you're rooting for Ohio State, right?
We are 100%. There's nothing but Buckeyes all around. Yep.
Awesome, awesome. Well, listen, you have a wonderful family. Please have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Again, I am very thankful for our friendship and for the opportunity just to, catch up and have this great conversation that I know will help many people be more successful, but more importantly, help others be successful as you have done over the course of your career. So for my audience, please hit like and share this episode, subscribe to my podcast because we hope to have additional great guests like Mitch on to share their knowledge with you that will, again, help you get to where you want to be in life, regardless of whatever endeavor you choose to take, whether it's in corporate America or as an entrepreneur. So, Mitch, congratulations on your success, but more importantly, congratulations for helping other people be successful because that's true success, right?
Yep. Absolutely. And thank you for what you do, Octavius. I love your business. I love your motto, and I love the way that you pay it forward every single day. It doesn't surprise me. Knowing you all these years doesn't surprise me a bit, but it's been a pleasure to be part of this. Thank you for including me. Anytime I can help you or any of your fans on there, I'm glad to do it. And I look forward to continuing to talk to you and watch you and listen to your podcasts and be part of this great journey with you. So thank you, and you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family.
Okay, happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
Thank you very much.